What is going on, everyone, and welcome to the Philly Frenzy podcast. My name is Matt. I will be your host. Today, depending on when you listen to this, is the very first episode of the Philly Frenzy podcast. And what I'm pretty much going to do for the first episode is I'm going to cover the James Harden trade with Brooklyn, and I'm going to pretty much detail a little bit of what this podcast is going to be. A lot of you might sit here and say, well, it's called Philly Frenzy Podcast. I'm not a Philadelphia fan. What's the point of listening? I'm not going to cover strictly Philadelphia sports. I'm a Philadelphia fan. I'm more biased with Philadelphia. I'm going to cover Philadelphia. But when a big deal happens in the NBA or in the MLB, and when the playoffs are going on in the NFL or the offseason and coaching changes, this and that, I will cover it. My idea is to do a once a week show. It may turn into twice a week depending on how I feel. You guys are interested, and if you're not interested, then it might stay at one show. But if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, my Twitter handle is at mhathaway HATHAWAY 23. That's mhathaway 23 on Twitter, and then on Facebook you could type in Philly space Frenzy, and you should see my logo pop up. Click it, hit the like button. Keep up to date with everything that I post. Make sure you guys know what's going on. I try to give enough information on what's going on in the sports world as soon as I'm giving the information from, depending on the source and what app I am using at that time. But like I said, tonight is the first night of my podcast, the Philly Frenzy podcast, and I'm going to cover the James Harden trade to Brooklyn. Houston and Brooklyn decided to make a deal this week, and reports had come out that Philadelphia was interested in James Harden, and it seemed like they were going to pull the trigger with trading Ben Simmons and the rookie Maxey from Kentucky with a couple first-round picks over to Houston, and they were going to get James Harden. James Harden and Joel Embiid would have been a very good combination, and I've said that before. And I think Brooklyn got nervous. And with Brooklyn getting nervous, they decided to throw everything in the kitchen sink at Houston and make sure that they couldn't walk away empty-handed from this deal. With making this deal, you get James Harden, who everyone knows is a 30, 35 point a night player. And you're adding him to go with KD. And if Kyrie Irving decides to randomly show up, you now have a big three. And it's a team that can make a run. In my opinion, I do not think they could beat the Lakers in the best of seven. And I don't think they could beat the Sixers team built right now in the best of seven. But it is a very good team. My issue with the deal is that Brooklyn ended up trading 4 first-round draft picks, 4 swap first-round draft picks, LeVert, Prince, and Jared Allen, and received James Harden. Just James. With Harden being the only piece back, and in a sense, you're trading 8 first-round draft picks because Harden's on a 3-year deal. If Harden leaves after 3 years, or if KD decides to opt out, or if Kyrie does not show up, we're not going to say that Houston isn't a better team. And if Houston wins more games, they could easily make this swap one of these situations where, say, they have the 22nd pick and Brooklyn's got the 18th pick. Now, granted, it's a 4-pick difference, but if you're sitting there and you like a guy who's projected to go in the top 20, you could easily make that swap, and now you're inside the top 20, and your team is competing at a high level because you have a higher overall pick than Brooklyn does, and now you're, in a sense, getting even more out of this deal because of the assets that Brooklyn gave up. When you look at this deal, Brooklyn traded the house for a guy who's going to come in and not even sure if he's going to mesh with Kyrie. The idea that he wouldn't mesh with Kevin Durant gets thrown out the window. Durant is a wing player who is not ball dominant, but can be ball dominant. So when you start looking at this trade, there's so much wrong with it that it just looks like Brooklyn got nervous, pulled the trigger, and said, give us James Harden before Philadelphia gets him. If I'm Brooklyn, I'm hoping this works. And I don't want one championship out of this. I'm looking for possibly 3 to 5 championships. This isn't something that just, you sit there and go, I want James Harden. One championship is enough. You saw it last year with the Clippers. They built themselves in the offseason. They had a good head coach in Doc Rivers, and they had a bench. Now you look at Brooklyn, you got these 3 guys, and Kyrie's MIA. And you have a first-time coach in Steve Nash, and you don't have the bench you had before this deal. And Philadelphia is a very good team, and Philadelphia is very long. Athletic, defensive, something that Brooklyn is not. James Harden is not an elite defender. He's not going to come in and, stop LeBron. In a sense, you got to think in the long run, because the idea is to build this and then go to the championship and play the Lakers. This team can't guard the Lakers. So for them to be this much invested into one player and not know if they're going to win a championship just doesn't make sense to me. And you got people that are sitting here telling me that this is the best team on paper ever. This Brooklyn team cannot be better than the Chicago Bulls on paper when Dennis Rodman first signed. They cannot be better than Boston's Big Three. Boston's Big Three was deep, not only in starters, but on the bench. They're not deeper than Miami Heat when LeBron joined and Chris Bosh, because Miami had a bench. They're not deeper than when LeBron went back to Cleveland to play with Kyrie and Kevin Love. They're nowhere near the Golden State Warriors when Golden State went on a run. This team isn't even close to the Clippers team that was put together last offseason, or the Lakers team put together this offseason. But somehow people think this is the best team on paper they've ever seen. On paper, you have a team that's going to score 120 points a night between your starting lineup, but you might be giving up 160. So, for you to think that one deal is going to make or break your season, make or break your future, and trade away 4 firsts, 4 swaps, LeVert, Prince, and Allen is just asinine. I would be shocked if Brooklyn wins a championship this season. I would be shocked if Brooklyn wins a championship at all with this 3 on the roster. And I don't know if Durant re-signs with Brooklyn in the offseason. Yeah, Durant's got the 1 year plus the 1 year player option. He's pulling a LeBron. But to think that he's going to re-sign if they don't make the NBA Finals? It's not logical. What assets does he have to sit back on and say, Brooklyn is where I want to be because we could win and contend every single year? You can't contend and win if you traded all your assets and it's not working between you, Kyrie, and Harden. To be fair, I want this to work. I'd like to see this big 3 work in Brooklyn. I'm a Kyrie fan. I'm a Durant fan. I have nothing against James Harden, but I just don't see it working. To the extent of this deal, there hasn't been one anywhere near this. People compare it to the Lakers trading for Anthony Davis 2 seasons ago. Anthony Davis isn't 31 years old. Anthony Davis isn't making $40 million a year. And Anthony Davis was not out of shape when they traded for him. Anthony Davis is an offensive and defensive player. He plays both sides of the ball, something that James Harden does not do. And I do not believe they traded 8 first-round draft picks for Anthony Davis. So this is a deal that we've never seen in a sense. And they traded everything. In every trade, you have winners and you have losers. In this deal, Houston is the clear-cut winner, followed by Indiana getting LeVert, followed by Cleveland getting Allen and Prince, followed by the Brooklyn Nets trading everything and getting James Harden. I'm happy Philadelphia didn't make this deal. I'm sad Brooklyn made this deal. You traded everything for one guy, and you don't know what you're getting out of it. To me, if you had a magic ball and you rubbed it and it said make the deal, then you make the deal. But with you not knowing what the future holds, why trade everything away? You have Kyrie Irving, who we don't know if he wants to play basketball anymore. We got Kevin Durant coming off of Achilles injury, which made him sit all of last year. Hoping everything is good with Durant. Hopefully he turns back into form. And you have James Harden, who was overweight during the beginning of this season, coming to Brooklyn. He came to Brooklyn. They played their first game tonight. James Harden was impressive. Slimmed down, triple-double, 34 points, 14 assists, 11 rebounds. James Harden looked like the guy you would trade, I guess, a couple first-round draft picks for. I don't know if you're going to get James Harden 4 first-round draft picks and 4 first-round swaps ever out of this. And that's why I say that Brooklyn gave up too much, and that's why I have Brooklyn as the loser. This isn't Michael Jordan walking through the door. This isn't Kobe Bryant suiting up in a Brooklyn Nets uniform. This is James Harden, who just got traded for, quote-unquote, 8 first-round draft picks. I hope everyone enjoyed this show. I will be back soon. It will not be a week. I'm in the process of actually recording my second episode to drop before Monday. Just a sneak peek. We'll talk about the coaching staff in Philadelphia and what needs to get done and who they're interested in and who I would have on my board. I hope everyone has a good day, a good night. Remember, follow me on Twitter, mhathaway23. And I appreciate everyone coming out and listening.